You're listening to I Have Some Notes, a podcast supported by listeners like you. To contribute, visit patreon.com/I Have Some Notes. Greg, I've got a great pitch to throw at you.
All right, let's have it. What the hell was that?
A pitch. I threw you a pitch. We're doing a baseball movie this week. What did you think was going to happen?
I have some notes.
Welcome, everyone, to I Have Some Notes, the movie podcast with cuts, keeps, punch-ups, and tweaks on mediocre movies. I'm your host, Liam Greswick.
I'm Scott C. Bourgeois.
And I'm Gregg Beaver.
And today we are discussing the 2016 film Everybody Wants Some! Exclamation point. Love a movie with exclamation or any kind of punctuation. That
yeah, big fan. Liam is a big fan.
Two punctuations was a choice, Dickie Links. And of course, we are joined by a guest I'm very excited to have on this podcast, a very funny comedian and the host of the Walk Off podcast, one of the most popular Blue Jays baseball podcasts, here to discuss this baseball movie. My good friend Scott Belford is here. Hello, Scott.
Hello, Liam. Hello, gentlemen. It's good to be here. I'm excited to talk. Everybody wants some. As mediocre as this movie is, and it is very mediocre. It's so funny because even watching it, I'm like, I actually like this movie. And while watching it, I was like, yeah, but I can't defend this. Like,
well, it warms my heart to hear you say that, because I was afraid that if I came at this too hard, I might offend our guest. I'm not, though. I actually, in the end, I felt like I had a good time with this, surprisingly.
Yeah, we
agreed.
We wanted to do a baseball movie, and we ended up going with Everybody Wants Some, because so many of the baseball movies that are classics are like sacrosanct. They kind of enter into the lofty air of untouchable. So we were like, let's do Everybody Wants Some. And then we watched the movie, and it's like, baseball is very incidental to this film.
Yes.
Not a lot of baseball in this movie.
I agree with that, but they do a really good job of putting little Easter eggs in there for the baseball nerds. And I mean, we will dive more into that, but there are little parts of it where I'm just like, oh man, if you didn't play baseball, that whole scene meant nothing, right? So,
such as, like, what would be one we might have missed?
Okay, so right off the top, left-handed pitchers are known kind of like goaltenders are in hockey. They're just like a little different. They're weird. The thing with left-handed pitchers too is that everybody makes a big deal about them. And so they've probably had like a bunch of admiration thrown at them since they were young, just for being able to throw pretty well left-handed. And it's just, there aren't as many left-handers out there, and the numbers and the analytics of baseball says that a righty is going to pitch much better against left-handers and vice versa. So if you throw left, the majority of hitters are hitting right. So you just have an advantage over the largest percentage of guys coming to the plate. So baseball loves numbers like that. So, but they're also weird, and they're kind of off to themselves and stuff like that. So when right off the gate, when they're in the frat house or whatever, and the big all-American hitter is already in the house, right? And Jake comes in, and he's like, new to the party or whatever, just got there, hasn't met his teammates yet. And he introduces himself, and he's like, right away, he's friendly, but then he's like, what position do you play? And he's like, oh, I'm a pitcher. And right away, he's like, oh, we can't be friends. Right. Yeah. And then he even asks in that moment, he's like, you're not a lefty. And that's just like a little like tidbit. If you're like not a baseball nerd, it's just an irrelevant piece of nothing. Right. And it probably just adds to their douchiness.
Yeah, makes him that extra special unicorn boy that he has to, not let him keep that status. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Amazing. This was a Richard Linklater film from 2016 called Everybody Wants Some. It stars Blake Jenner as Jake, Zoe Dutch as Beverly, Glenn Powell as Finnegan, Taylor Hoechlin as McReynolds, Wyatt Russell as Willoughby, and J. Quentin Johnson as Dale.
This movie was chock full of people I almost recognized.
Yeah, it's got a big cast, and it's interesting because we really do kind of get to know a lot of the guys in the house decently well, I think. Like, to the point where you kind of feel like you're chumming around with them when you're watching them, like, go to parties and stuff. Mm-hmm. It feels like you're hanging out with these guys for a weekend, and that is kind of a testament to the movie in a way.
Yeah, I think that's its main charm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Dazed and Confused, but in an era that didn't have as good a music. That's literally what they were attempting to do. Even out of the gate when they're playing My Sharona, and I'm just like, man, Sweet Emotion was way cooler. Like, you know, they're gonna start a movie.
I'm actually glad you mentioned the Dazed and Confused angle of it, because I had never seen it, so I also watched it in preparation for watching this movie. I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but this movie infinitely better than Dazed and Confused, and frankly, Dazed and Confused overrated. I can't believe the hype that movie has, having watched it for the first time a week ago.
Well, I hate that. I hate everything you just said, Liam.
It just seems like it's catnip for boomers. It was just like, hey, do you remember 1976? And then in 1993, I'm sure it was blowing boomers' minds. I'm sure if they made the same movie but just set it in 2005, I'd be all gaga for it as well. High school in 2005. Oh, look at all the clicks. MySpace. But it was just for boomers in 1993, as far as I'm concerned.
That's fair. I mean, I don't like that you're calling me a boomer. I'm 41, but
no, we're all about the same age. It's just that was like Richard Linklater, right? Like he's putting that, you know.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be this timeless high school classic, but I found it mostly like, and it's interesting because it's.
But how do you make a timeless high school classic, right? Like, because it did hold up 20 years ago. Or I loved it 20 years ago anyways. Yeah. I don't know.
I just, as a cannabis enthusiast, I thought it was more of a like, I got the impression it was like a Cheech and Chong movie or something. And when it was just like, here's a bunch of American kids wondering what's next. I'm like, oh, okay. I'd only like half of them.
But you pointed out, after watching this, you felt that Dazed and Confused is very much about the end of high school. Mm-hmm. Whereas Everybody Wants Some is about the beginning of college. It's the start of something. And it has a completely different kind of feel to it because of that.
And that makes it different enough to justify it.
Well, yeah. But also, and I thought Jake was a good protagonist because he was new coming into this, like, into this team, into this house that they all live in, into this college environment. So we got to kind of like share his journey in getting to know these people, in kind of getting settled into college. And he's decently likable. Like, he's not a total jerk. None of them are really total jerks. Mm-hmm. Even if some of them, like, give you a bad first impression, it's actually a magic trick the movie pulls. Some of the guys do give Jake a bad first impression and then totally redeem themselves later on.
Yeah, they come together as a team, and it's a pretty, common sports theme, but I like it. And they do a pretty decent job of, like, kind of by the end, they're all like, yes, we're going to win state or whatever the hell they're winning, right?
Because we're the only good team at this college.
That's swagger. Yeah, but they dare you to not like the characters in the first 20 minutes of the movie. Like, I'm like, are all of these guys just Ben Affleck from Dazed and Confused? This could be a long movie if it's just 16 Ben Afflecks from Dazed and Confused.
It's very, very bro-y, and but then it wears itself thin quite quickly. Yeah, and then I was, like I said to Liam earlier, like I felt like I was ready to just pack it in and walk away from it within the first 20 minutes. But it did ultimately find its legs with me, and I did walk away from it feeling pretty good.
Yeah,
in a pretty good mood.
It really teaches you that good-looking people can just dress up differently and still look good doing it. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of good-looking people, that I'm excited to see Glenn Powell show up in more things, because that guy's he's in Top Gun Maverick, and he's in some new rom-com with Sydney Sweetie. What, I forget. And he's in a rom-com, and he's a rom-com guy now. But he's got this kind of like charismatic, acerbic wit swagger that Ryan Reynolds has, but the same kind of like steely, piercy blue pouty face as Ryan Gosling. And dare I say, better than the sum of its parts?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know that I'd walk up to saying that he steals the show here, because everybody's really quite good. But he's definitely a standout in the cast. Actually, the whole cast is really good. Like, as an ensemble goes, they got together a really good group of guys that all really click together. They have really good chemistry together. Zoe Dutch as like token girl. Is really good, and she has good chemistry with Blake Jenner. I liked her character. I thought she was very believable too. And as a theater nerd, I was like, yeah, that's absolutely a theater party. That's 100%. Yep, I've been to a party like that before. Like,
that was one of the most relatable parts, was the theater party being like, yeah, I've been to parties where people are just doing weird shit on the floor for no reason. I think about the Next Fest, like naked night, where there was literally a heavy petting zoo at one point. It was just like, you could go in and people had consented to, like, you want to come in and hug on a mat at this party? Is wild. Yeah.
I mean, they did do.
I've been to crazy theater parties too.
Yeah, they did do a pretty good job of like really dialing in the microscope on all of the parties and the different genres of people that there were, and really like turning it to the max. You know, like even when they were doing the line dancing, I'm like, oh yeah, I've been at that country bar. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Like, that's how they look. Yes,
and I've been in that punk circle.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And Gregg was saying before we turned on the mics that he was always expecting there to be some conflict involving these jocks going into an environment that they don't belong. And every time they just chameleon themselves in, because they're motivated by trying to hook up with girls and have a good time. And so they're willing to just like blend into whatever environment they're in. So they fit in at the country bar. They fit in at the disco. They fit in at the punk concert. They fit in at the theater party. And it's just kind of delightful to see them
Is that doing healthy the same masculinity?
I don't know. But the fact that they're willing to do that too was very charming in a way.
That's what I felt like they were dialing it up to like just right near toxic masculinity and just dialing back a scotch. Yeah. So that it didn't really like turn your stomach.
I just appreciated that like they hit you with the thesis of the movie fairly like deftly right at the end when he like sits down into the class. It's now the first day of class. He's going to sleep at the desk, which also is very funny that he's like, finally, the end of the movie. But the teacher on the chalkboard writes, "Frontiers are where you find them." And it's like, oh, that's been the theme all along. But instead of like foreshadowing it or like teeing it up early, it's like, we kind of come to the same conclusion at the end of the movie, and then they're like, hey, in case you didn't get it, this is what it was about. But
exclamation mark, just like in the title.
Yeah.
But since we've mentioned the end of the movie, perhaps we should hit our listeners with a quick synopsis. So we, if you haven't seen this one, you know exactly what goes down.
This ain't high school, man. You're at a new level here. You have not earned teammate status yet.
Who the hell are you? Oh, Jake Bradford.
And until you do, you're nobody.
Excuse me. Yeah. Bye.
I'd like to introduce you to the new guys. 2 rules. No booze in this house. Number 2, no girls upstairs in those bedrooms.
I'm seriously worried about these new guys.
Oh! Look at what we have here. Hey, ladies. Party later tonight at the baseball houses.
You should be investing this energy elsewhere.
Lesbians.
I like the quiet guy in the backseat.
Oh, there's nothing here. Yeah, I can see how that could get threatening. New guy coming in, getting all the ladies. That was a joke.
I got your joke right here.
Did he just call it a joke?
That's what he implied.
Baseball player Jake goes to college and has a pretty good time. He goes to parties with his new housemates, plays a little baseball, and eventually meets a nice theater nerd. They kiss. Then, Jake goes to class. The end.
That's beautiful.
That's the story.
I've been given Scott marathons to read lately for plot summaries, so this movie really gave me an opportunity to give him a break.
Yeah, it's very much a slice of life movie. Like you follow these dudes, primarily Jake, but kind of the whole ensemble of dudes through like the weekend before the first day of college. And that's it. There's no real conflict other than like a few little squabbles here and there that just happen when people are living together. It's just like, this is just a little piece out of Jake's life that we get to experience with him. And it's very enjoyable. It's weirdly enjoyable.
Yeah.
There were some cool scenes too. Like just, I don't know why I'm such a sucker for like 4 guys walking into a building to a cool song, but there was plenty of that in this.
Yeah. 100%.
I mean, it had sort of, I guess you can call it like a comforting loop. I found it a little frustrating, but it was like they go to a party, something happens after the party, then they go to another party, something happens, go to a party. And like, that was sort of like the first half of the movie. And yeah, that's kind of where I was a little bit like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to dig anything that this movie's throwing at me. I think it turned for me at the baseball scene. Cause maybe at long last, my brain was like, baseball. We're finally seeing bats and such, right?
Well, and it's also what really makes them as characters and as housemates kind of finally click, because they talk a lot about actually playing baseball, and then you see them play some baseball, even if it's just like their optional wink mandatory practice.
Yeah.
And it all kind of comes together, and it all makes sense in that moment. It's kind of beautiful, actually.
The scout they think they see too. That is just like such an ongoing thing, and it doesn't matter, baseball, hockey. There's always somebody watching, right? Like every team motivates themselves. There's somebody checking this out. Like college, I didn't even play college sports, but like all my buddies who did, like that's literally all they thought about, right? Was just, oh, when's a scout gonna see the talent that I truly am? And I just love how they depicted that. It was great. I also, you know what else I loved about the movie was like just the little side story they had with Wyatt Russell, who was the 30-year-old, right? And got busted. Yeah. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen Battered Bastards of Baseball, but
nope.
That's a documentary on Netflix. And even if you're not a baseball fan, it's such a fun little piece of baseball where basically baseball's a monopoly. Major League Baseball. There used to be independent teams all over North America, right? That weren't affiliated with Major League Baseball at all. And one of those teams was the Portland Beavers. And baseball wound up literally buying up all these independent teams, taking all the players. So what it did was it eliminated the competition amongst these teams, because baseball became a big business and it was all about developing players and stuff, and having a minor league system where you can do so. So the competitives left, and then the players left all the time. So it was tough for fans to like get involved in like cheering on a team for years, because the players are rolling over every 6 months.
Turnover.
Exactly. But anyways, long story short, Kurt Russell's dad, Bing Russell, he was a big movie star, or well, not a movie star, but they called him like a jobber. Like he just went out and worked. I guess he like was in like 150 Westerns and died or whatever, right? Like he was that type of actor where he'd just go in and do his scene and away you go. He got sick of it. This is the longest story. Sorry, I'll wrap it up. But
no, it's great. He literally, the fact that you've tied in movie history to it, keep it going. It's great.
So he literally goes from LA, quits all his acting stuff, took all his money, and he bought an independent team in Portland after this team had been bought by the Major League franchise, and then moved. So Portland, that had a team, all of a sudden had nothing. He comes in and he's the first and only independent team running a baseball organization in the United States. And this affiliate league lets them come in because they think they're going to be a joke. And basically, they moneyballed before Moneyball, right? Like they were picking up really good. They were picking up really good ball players that just like had a big mustache, and they're like, "Oh, he's disgusting," right? It's the like early 70s, so like it was just like all these long-haired hippies and like all these like guys from Mexico, right? Like just like Hispanic descent, and they're like, "Nah, we're good." So basically, this Portland team of like underdogs, Kurt Russell's playing first base for them because he was a great ball player, and his dad owns the team, and like they wind up winning. Anyways, long story short, this team becomes so good that for 4 years they compete for the championship, and the only way that they get beat is that the major league teams literally come to the finals, start sending the best players from like AAA and stuff down to play this A team so that they can save face. Anyways, all of this to say, it was kind of cool to see Wyatt Russell as like a part of this movie because baseball does run throughout so deep throughout the Russell name. And it was just kind of neat to see him be the guy who's like, can't give the game up, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Sick. I didn't realize that guy was related to Kurt Russell.
There you go.
There you go.
You didn't realize Wyatt Russell's his son.
Yeah. I had just finished watching Monarch, which has Kurt Russell and Wyatt Russell in it. And I'm watching this movie and I'm like, who is that? Every time he came out, I was like, I know that face. It was like, so there was so many like Glenn Powell. I thought that, and, Tyler Hoechlin. Like I had seen them before. Cause like Tyler Hoechlin's the new Superman.
Yeah.
Right?
He's been playing Superman on TV. Yeah.
I don't watch that show. But I knew I had seen his face, and that was like half the cast for me.
I also, just to bring it back to Willoughby, the guy who can't give up the game, played by Wyatt Russell. I also just like that he like, I think the role he plays in the story is that like, you got to go figure out what you want to do. You got to go find those new frontiers. And here's a guy who can't give it up.
Yeah.
And it's going to cost him everything. Like eventually, like you got to move forward. You got to take that next chance. You can't spin your tires.
Yeah. It does catch up to you. No, that's a great summation of it. Absolutely.
And I also like the stoner character. He's the guy who's like, yeah, man, you just gotta smoke this up.
Yeah,
man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he plays, he plays good baseball. Like that was another thing that impressed me about the movie is like the baseball scenes you could tell that they had chosen actors that were very competent at it, right? Like it felt gamey. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The thing about Willoughby as well, that I kind of liked is after he gets busted and after they find out why he was busted, because we're left hanging on that for a little bit. Like, why did he just get kicked off the team?
Yeah.
And it comes out that he lied about his age in order to continue playing college baseball. And the guys are like, isn't that weird? Also, he was a super cool dude. I'm not even angry at him. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, it's a drag. It's a bummer.
Going with the theme of no conflict. Even the one conflict they had, everyone was like, we're cool with it though.
Yeah. The one conflict that actually resolves itself properly is in that same scene with the crazy pitcher who's thinking that he's everything to baseball.
Yeah.
And then McReynolds shows him up by slamming home a home run when he's trying to throw him heaters, right? So yeah, there is stuff there, but it's highly contained and it doesn't really transfer from scene to scene.
In fact, if anything, it really plays into them gelling as a team more, and it shows examples of like, you know, him being the leader and the pitcher getting in line after that. I love too that the pitcher was just like such a nut job and like also could be put in his place so quickly, because we've all met guys like that, right? Like, a lot of bark, and as soon as there's another dog, they're like, "Whoa, okay."
Yeah, there's all of the dudes on the team seemed like really believable characters to me. Like half of them were like, "Oh, I know that guy." Like,
yeah, it's a very natural dialogue too. Naturally written and naturally delivered. Like when they're sitting around pouring the beers, I was like, "Damn, this is like." You know, truly slice of life. Like I buy it profoundly.
Yeah.
The one character that was a little odd to me was the guy they called Buter, because he has this almost dark scene where he's extremely menacing to Jake, where he just like, Jake wants to, he's looking for a place to make out with this girl that he's met at the party, right? And he comes up to his room, and Buter is his roommate, and he's just asking him if he can have the room for a little bit. And like, he refuses in kind of just like this darkly dickish way. And that was an interesting scene, but the very next scene, he's completely like subservient to everyone, like all the other players on the team. Like he doesn't, none of that, darkness comes out in him again for the rest of the movie. And it seemed like a strange choice to me.
I loved it because I've met lots of guys like that, where it's like they kind of are the one who's getting bullied, and then he sees Jake is also a rookie, and why the heck does this guy get any leeway? I'm going to like flex on this dude. So yeah. I like that it stood out to you, but I just was like, oh yeah, that guy.
Yeah. As a longtime victim of bullying, strategy number 1 is get it onto someone else. That's the easiest way. You can't fight it. You can only redirect it.
It doesn't seem like he didn't like if he came down in that next scene where he had a moment where he was trying to big dog the veterans on the team, and then he got shut down. That would sort of like make a little bit more sense to me, but he just like he didn't even try, you know. He was just like, he was immediately just like he was like completely shy or taken aback by them. So yeah, that was the one thing that I felt that didn't ring particularly true to me in a movie that's full of like, you know, pretty natural interactions from character to character.
It's funny because there were so many scenes that were eye-rolling to me, but also I enjoyed. Like the scene where he cuts the ball in half with the axe. Like I hated it and loved it at the same time. Like like such an impossible, ridiculous thing, but also what a cool, fun idea. I don't know if it was executed properly or what everyone else thought, but like I was also there were just like so many scenes like that where I was like, am I cringing at this or did I just enjoy that? Because I'm kind of on the fence.
Yeah.
I want to pivot to Jake and Beverly's little romance toward the end, because I liked it, and one of the reasons I liked it is because this is like a high school jock and a high school theater nerd who sit down and have like a meaningful conversation with one another and realize they have a very shared experience. And I really like appreciated that they connected on that because they're both coming from a place where they were the best at what they do in their high school. And now they're with all other people who were the best at what they did as well in their high school. And they're no longer the big fish in their little pond. And for Beverly, it's because she was always the lead in her high school play, but now she's not sure she's even going to get like some like minor role. Like, yeah. And Jake is like legitimately concerned. Like, will I make the team in the end?
There's 3 other pitchers. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how they kind of like find the common ground and like click. And I was like, oh, that's really sweet. And I like that it's like 2 different high school cliques realizing they actually have a lot in common in a way.
They actually
because they're not in high school anymore.
Yeah, they actually do. And I'm just kind of realizing this now as I'm listening to you kind of describe that. But they do actually do a pretty good job of showing people that are confident in what they do, but are experiencing self-doubt for maybe the first time in a long time.
Yeah.
That's true with both Beverly and Jake. And to an extent, the other rookies on the team in the house with him, too.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the kind of interesting stuff you can do when, like, we were joking about how there's no conflict, but there's also no antagonist. Like, there's not any person who's like hand-wringingly evil. There's no space lasers. There's no like big bad to defeat. And because of that, you get to just explore the kind of like weird nuances of just interpersonal relationships. And I think that's why there's so many little conflicts instead of one big one, is because it's just Jake rubbing up against a new personality that both him and us are like, well, fuck this guy. He's gonna be the bad guy. Oh no, he's just a guy. He's learning too. He's
So, it's like it's a wonderful little character movie. And guys, I'm just gonna say I liked this movie. Like,
I'm gonna say I like it too. And also, I think what we're describing here is maybe even why I like it better than Dazed and Confused, is because Dazed and Confused feels like an anthology. Like you could have done Dazed and Confused, like, let's see what these guys get up to on a night, and let's see what these guys get up to on a night. But instead of doing it like an anthology, Dazed and Confused, it's like it's all woven together. It's like 20 short stories woven together. Whereas this is more Jake and a supporting character stepping into these new frontiers and having these new, like, just bang, new experience, bang. And I think it gives it more of a genuine arc, even if it doesn't make for a, like, beginning, middle, and end story.
No, that's really well put. And, like, I like how you put it, that, like, Dazed and Confused really is just a bunch of short stories smashed together, whereas this, even though there's not really much of a story, you are kind of just following Jake along as he goes. And I do like that there are little nuances that just would happen in life too. Like when he runs into his punk buddy who quit baseball and was like, yeah, I hate baseball and my dad's a dick. It's like, okay, well, yeah, we know that guy.
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh, wait, do you guys want to come to a punk concert? And he's like, I don't know, guys, do you want to go to a punk concert? And Finnegan is just like, hell yeah, we want to go to a punk concert.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I almost found that part of it to be a bit of a relief, because it was almost like there were conflicts that were sort of set up, and I would say that they almost like they are analogous to, so like a conflict that might arise in like a sitcom or something like that. Like when Jake invites all of the baseball buddies to the theater party, you think that, like, in my head, I was like, oh, you know, he's going to ruin his relationship with this woman because he's going to bring all these jocks to her theater party and they're going to ruin it in some way or something like that. Right.
Yeah.
And that's not at all what happens. Everyone goes there and has a great time. And it's just like, for me, it was like kind of a relief that, like, that none of that expected tension happened. It was just kind of like, oh, everyone was nice. That's nice. That's nice. This is a nice movie.
I think we're going to head into our fixes here, but as we've been discussing this, it did remind me, if you want another movie set in a very specific time that just sort of follows some characters in and out of scenarios as they learn and grow, Licorice Pizza is basically that.
Really?
Just this, like, couple, Paul Thomas Anderson movie about just, like, two young people, like, falling in love, and like they're navigating their weird relationship by rubbing it up against a bunch of weird scenarios. And a lot of plot elements get added late in the movie because it's a bunch of almost vignettes instead of an arc. But we've also been seeing a lot of praise of this one, so I'm excited to get into our fixes, because I think that's where we can maybe find some of its faults, polish them up. Do you polish baseballs? And make this an even better film.
What's up, nerds? This is Josh from Talking Smack, where we talk superheroes, movies, animation, comics, and so much more. Every week, we break down the latest blockbuster movies, TV shows, revisit comic events. We even talk to comic creators like Kyle Higgins, Melissa Flores, and Matt Groom. And don't miss out on our Superhero Showdown episodes, where we debate your suggestions on who would win in a fight, or maybe they might become friends. So join in on the conversation with me, Josh, and my co-host Alex every Wednesday on your podcatcher of choice. Look for our yellow and red icon, and we'll see you soon, Smackheads.
Welcome back to I Have Some Notes. We're talking Everybody Wants Some! ! With Scott Belford, the host of the Blue Jays podcast, The Walk-Off. I meant to ask this off the top, Scott. We couldn't be farther from baseball season, right?
Well, actually, pitchers and catchers just reported to spring training a couple days ago, and there's starting to be things to talk about again. We've still been podcasting like 3 times a week because all of our listeners are ridiculous nerds. So that's
so are ours.
Yeah, there you go. Right? It's a good cross. It's a good cross genre here. But so it is starting to kick into gear here, and I'm excited. I'm actually headed to spring training here in about a week, so I'm excited to go down and watch some baseball and check out some of those minor league parks. Yeah,
cool,
sick. Excited for you. Yeah, I love seeing you traveling around, going to all the different baseball events. I love when people have a passion for things like movies, sports, whatever. Just it is cool and good to invest yourself in something. I
Agreed.
think it's one of the points of life.
Yes.
Speaking of points, I have some pointers for this movie. I'll start. I'll kick us off, if you will. Allow me. I understand why we spend so much time in the early part of the movie meeting the whole team. It's the foundation that the back half is built on. But as Gregg said in the first half, things really kick off like when he meets Beverly, like getting that relationship going is like kind of when you get a deeper emotional investment. And I would have liked to have seen a little more from Beverly earlier. One interaction with her between when she flirts with him in the car and when he tapes roses to her door. Just one other moment where they interact. Because I just wanted to get to know her a little more and just see him kind of like pining, where it almost felt like they forgot about her until over halfway through.
Can I jump in on you right there?
Sure.
Because this leads directly into what my fix was going to be. If you can even call it a fix. Because I don't know that this would make the movie better. It would make it different. What if the movie wasn't only about Jake? What if it was split between Jake and Beverly evenly? We meet Jake, he meets Beverly, and then we cut between the two of them following both of their first weekend at college, and then it dovetails together at the party at the end.
I even have in my notes here, Jake gets Beverly way too easy. Like it happened, it was just like boom, boom, done, right? And it's like, I love that you brought up, more Beverly. Really would have helped a lot of things here, I think. Yeah.
Well, it might have added more girls to the cast if, like, we were following Beverly and some of the people surrounding her, as well as Jake and some of the people surrounding him.
I think it's a really astute observation, Scott, because they they mirror each other in the way that they their past, how they're dealing with as you said in the previous half about being the most skilled at something in high school and coming to college and not being the most skilled. Like, it would definitely be interesting to see the two of them kind of how their whole college experience works, and then how it ultimately comes together in them being a couple. I think that would be really interesting. And then you can have they could probably meet at parties here and there, and maybe they don't necessarily click right away, or there's it doesn't have to be a major amount of conflict, but just, maybe she's standoffish to him, or something like that.
It makes me wonder how much got cut, right? Because this is one of those movies where I do get the feeling the producer was like, 86 minutes. We get this. We can get this down to under 90 minutes. So who knows?
Yeah. I could have watched, no joke, I could have watched another hour of this movie. Yeah. Like I would have just been like, I'm still having a good time.
So I came to a similar conclusion when I was writing, like, hey, he should meet Beverly earlier at first, of like, oh, why don't we just see Beverly's point of view and so that this movie passes the Bechdel test and we have just more women in the movie. I think that's a good reason to do that. But overall, I actually don't think I'm going to have to disagree, I guess. Because almost every scene has Jake in it, and it's entirely from his perspective, and it's him meeting all of these new people and experiencing all these new scenarios, which is why I phrase mine as, I want him to have one more interaction with Beverly between the flirting and the roses, because it is sort of like one of the harder new experiences for him to navigate, but still keep it focused on him. Because if we do what you say, Scott, where we follow Beverly like a second point of view character, now we need her cast of wacky housemates.
Yeah.
Her cast of what does it look like when she goes to the culinary school party?
Yeah, we're definitely adding like an hour to the film. As I said, I don't know that my suggestion
hours and hours of the baseball team. Yeah.
Yeah. No, as I said, I don't know that my suggestion makes the movie better. It would just make it different. Actually, if I can take Scott's comment and your suggestion and Gregg's suggestion and kind of merge them, mix them in a pot into a baseball stew. I think a good thing would have been for him to bump into her at another one of the venues they go to at some point, but for them to have bounced off each other, where they had that little flirt at first, and then he meets her in a completely different environment, and it doesn't go well. Like he tries to flirt with her again, but he tries to flirt with her the way that like the baseball team's just trying to pick up chicks, and it goes poorly, and she bounces off of that. And he feels really bad about it, which is why he then goes and makes the romantic gesture with the flowers to try to like make a good second impression. And then she gives him the time of day. They go on the date and they click because they realize they do have this shared connection. I think that would have been an interesting trajectory and would have given her more to do in the film as the top and really only billed woman.
Especially if wherever they meet, it's maybe him being a little bit fake or him trying really hard to fit into whatever scenario they're in, and her kind of calling him out like, oh, you're here at this punk concert, or oh, you're line dancing now. Maybe that could be a source of the friction to also then reinforce the theme of like new frontiers and trying out new shit.
He's coming across as fake because he's doing all this stuff, but also because that's what his teammates are doing, right? But at the same time, he's also trying to find himself. And when he's genuine with her in the end about that, I like that. I think that plays well with the themes of the film and gives her more to do.
I like it too. Let's do it.
Any other notes? I got a couple more, but what do you got?
I was just going to say, like, I actually don't have any notes for this one, so I'm glad that Scott had a bunch of stuff for us to bounce off of. But
and Liam,
I can't my armchair screenwriter brain wants to add a bunch of conflict to it, and I can't remember if I said this on air or not. But like, I just feel like if I do that, or if I suggest that, I feel like I'm just kind of like adding things that are missing the point of the movie, which is to be like a perfectly good slice of life, low conflict, very chill kind of movie. And it's perfectly, exactly. Like it's perfectly acceptable, the way that it is. Even though I think I maybe enjoyed it less than the rest of you, but like I can see where the appeal is.
My only critique, and this critique is honestly, I know it's just me. Because it's an 80s, it takes place in the 80s. So of course they're going to use 80s music. But man, some of the music choices, I was like, we can't do better than this. Like this. And again, I know music's a very personal taste thing, but that was like the big thing that like while watching it again, because I'd watched it once before and enjoyed it. So when you reached out, I was like, yeah, everybody wants them. I could do that again. And then when I watched it, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that the first time the music rubbed me the wrong way too. So
they kept using music that I only know the Weird Al lyrics.
Right. Yeah.
I did get a little excited. The punk house plays Stiff Little Fingers.
Yes.
I was kind of like, okay, I'm into it, but that's because I'm a punk nerd. Yeah.
At risk of just gushing about the movie more, I like that they go to the punk concert and they're having a party later that night. And when you see the party later that night, the punks are all at the party. They invited the punks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just all good vibes. And also, I don't think we need to apologize for gushing about this movie. We do some absolute slogs on this show. This is a joy to...
Every now and then...
This is a very interstellar situation, right?
Yeah, where we went into it expecting that it was going to be bad, and we're all just coming out of it going, oh, you know what? I really enjoyed that one.
It's so funny because it is a mediocre movie, but it's one of those mediocre movies that was just like a good 90-minute watch. Like, I did enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with Gregg. And I hate to say it because this is what our podcast is about, but it's hard to change anything in this movie without like fundamentally undermining the movie in a way. Like it's so tight in what it wants to deliver, and like it almost feels weird trying to like move things around or add something in. I don't know.
Even the note I had that he got Beverly too easily, after it doesn't feel accurate now that we've had this discussion, right? Like after talking this movie for 45 minutes, I'm like, no, they obviously specifically avoided any sort of conflict or problem that could happen. Like this was a choice. Like,
yeah. And sometimes people just like have a spark and decide to hook up, and that's kind of what happened with the two of them.
Yeah, especially in college.
I guess then if we're talking about conflict and how it doesn't really need it because it's not about that, then my other two notes are I would like them to cut them. The movie should cut the setup of two conflicts that I saw that never come up again and never get resolved. I don't understand why Buter leaves, comes back and goes, yeah, false alarm. And it's like, well, then why did you leave? Like, why did we have this whole thing about him leaving and him? Like, I don't know what the point, like there was all the other great stuff with Buter was good for the character, good for the movie. But that particular, I'm like, could that actor not shoot for a week or something? Like, why does that character leave for half the movie and come back for no reason?
Yeah, because he could have left and like you could have never seen him again and it would not have affected anything.
Yeah.
I think it's so they could have that there's kind of a resolution to that because they have that scene. I think it's in a cafeteria or some.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's after
whatever.
practice.
Yeah. And he talks about how there's so much temptation around him. Mm-hmm. And that was a scene where I was expecting like all the baseball jocks to make fun of him for wanting to have like a steady girlfriend or whatever. And then they all tell him like, no, man, just like you stay rock solid. You don't, just keep doing what you're doing. It was just like another one of those things where it set up some conflict and it was like, no, we're going to do the nice thing.
Yeah. Because his whole arc is pretty much about how he's trying to remain faithful and steadfast to his lady.
Yeah.
And that she has the pregnancy scare and he rushes back to her side to like make sure everything's kosher. And he comes back and the pressure's off and he's clearly more relaxed because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he has that moment of vulnerability and he's like, like there's that girl making like flirty eyes at me and there's a lot of temptations around, and the guys rally around him and are like, no, actually, if like we support you, like don't give in. Like that ties back into like them gelling as a team and them kind of in a way being there for each other, even though they're always in competition with one another, but they're also all supporting and lifting each other up.
Yeah.
It's a weird relationship dynamic between all of them and I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah,
it was fun.
It's such a like a kind of like an idealistic view of what college is. I mean, if you think about like what a much more realistic view of college would be, there would be all sorts of dark stuff going on and conflict and things like that. And yeah, it's just it's nice to watch something where like, well, here's how it could be. Like, this could be nice.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. This is like the opposite of Rent. Like, it's just like, it's a bunch of people coming together and great things and nice things happen to them.
Yeah.
In fairness, it is only like the 4 days leading up to the first day of college.
Yes,
and it's mostly them just partying and hanging out.
They had to cut. Yeah. They had to cut pretty quick there. Yeah.
There could be a sequel called Everybody Not Wants None, where all the bad shit starts happening.
Guys getting hooked on steroids and failing school and amazing.
I did want to take this conversation in a bit of a different direction since we're short on time here, but long on what's the word?
Short on notes. I think
short on notes. That's what I'm thinking of. Because I was thinking before we watched this movie, because I had thought we were going to be watching like a baseball movie initially. So it's got my brain thinking about what sports are inherently cinematic and what aren't. And it kind of like, and I'm interested to get your thoughts on this, Mr. Belford, because for me, like baseball movies in general are kind of like inherently cinematic because there's, the direct conflict between a pitcher and a batter. There's the heightened drama of the bases being loaded and all that kind of stuff, home runs, big catches and stuff like that. And there's such isolated moments and they're really easy to film, I think. Dramatic ways.
I'm biased. But yeah, I think baseball is the most romantic sport you could possibly tell a story about, and you really summed it up beautifully. And like, there's always going to be the competition, the one-on-one competition that is taking place at the forefront, and then the team is in the background. So you can really have some like cool camera work and cool team or cool adversarial looking pitches, right? Or, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like just visually, it's very clear, like antagonist, protagonist with how the sport is set up. Whereas
maybe it is even the sense of place, like the fact that you know what a baseball diamond looks like, whereas like a boxing ring or a hockey rink. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I was going to get at, because like my sport is hockey, and like I have not seen any movie yet that properly cinematically interprets the sport of hockey, because it is so chaotic, and it's just it's much more difficult, I think, to film a hockey play developing and what's magical about that. A lot of hockey tends to be filmed in like hyper close-ups of like sticks and skates and things like that, and none of that is like really what is interesting about the sport. The sport is so fast, and seeing how players deal with that speed and skill and how they are able to make plays and things like that. I think it's just not as naturally cinematic as even baseball or even football, which, football, you get those nice, like, you've got the huddle where you can raise the drama and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And once again, you have like, quarterback and receiver. So there's very easy visual cues to like, what the goal is. Football is not necessarily a simple sport, but like that part of it is, the cinematic part of it is.
No, I could never say what you just said, but I agree with everything that you pointed out. No, it was very well said. I agree.
Yeah. Is it maybe a time? Sorry, go ahead, Scott. Sorry.
I was going to say boxing is probably another sport that's inherently very cinematic.
Yeah.
I'm not just saying that because of like Rocky and Creed or Raging Bull, but they're all prime examples of how you get like you have that one-on-one conflict. You can get in really tight with the two people who are in the ring. You can have big moments and like really low lows, really high highs. It's again, it has that inherent cinematic nature to it.
I'm just thinking about specifically hockey and what Gregg said, and I wonder if it is because there's not a lot of downtime in the action in hockey. Like once the face-off happens, it's one smooth, fluid motion until someone scores a goal. Where even basketball, you get the hang time of the layup or the dunk. You get it bouncing on the rim.
Yeah. The
boxing has rounds. Baseball, obviously the innings, right? Like, or the, not even innings, pitches, like right down to like three pitches, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's lots of elements of it. That's I mean, in hockey, you have like the countdown to the end of the period or going into overtime. And those things are definitely like cinematic, but it's just like, then it becomes the challenge of like filming that. And I think that's where hockey movies really struggle, is like interpreting the drama that obviously exists in hockey. Cause for me, it's the best sport, and like it is like high drama to me, but like just you can't interpret it particularly well for whatever reason. Either that, or it's just a bunch of Americans filming it and have no idea.
Well, it's not just that. Here's something that I will point out. When you watch most hockey films, and when you think about most of the more popular or famous hockey films, what are they about? They're about violence. They're about the hooligans on the team. They're about the goons.
The two most famous I can think of are comedies, Slapshot and Goon.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think but that's the reason they focus on those, because they are big characters on the team. They get into fights, which means that you have instant conflict that is very easy to like focus on. That's what hockey movies, that's what the good quote unquote hockey movies focus on. And you're right. It's because it's hard. Hockey is so fast that it's hard to like zero in on like the drama of a play,
the moments
of hockey. Yeah.
Sports in general are just a great way to like manufacture drama. Like there's inherent, like as a non-sport, like, I don't like any sports, but I love sports movies because it's just like the stakes are really easy to establish and the drama is just like cooked into the premise.
Yeah. Even the baseball movies that aren't about baseball specifically, like the play on the field, like they still manage to, have very high drama. And I'm thinking of something like, Moneyball or something like that, where one of the most dramatic scenes is just Brad Pitt sitting and pacing while they're trying to get their 20th win or whatever. Right. And they're not even really showing too much of what's going on in the field. Like, there's just a lot about a baseball that's like simple in a way, but like just very friendly to cinema, I think.
Dope. Big thoughts from us and big thoughts from our listeners as well. We're going to jump into listener comments here. Thank you to everyone who hits us with those when we ask for them. Andrew Craig says, I need to watch this again. I love it paired with Dazed and Confused. I really enjoy the slice of life aspect of Linklater's storytelling and the music.
Fair.
I would be interested to watch this as a double feature, starting with Dazed and Confused and ending with Everybody Wants Some, because then you get the end of high school and the beginning of college, and I wonder if the movies would harmonize in an interesting way that way.
I do kind of. I more or less did. I watched them about a week apart, and that it makes the ending of high school, the beginning of college, really stand out the closer you watch them together.
I do kind of enjoy that, and I mean, this is coming from a baseball fan, so of course, but I do kind of enjoy that in both Dazed and Confused and Everybody Wants Some, they could have easily chose football to be the primary sport that these American college or high school kids are pursuing, and both are baseball. I mean, America's pastime. I know that's what it's called, but
But baseball is America's pastime. Football is America's religion.
Exactly.
Even I know when the Super Bowl is. I couldn't tell you when the World Series is.
I kind of like that in this movie they were talking about how there's other teams in the college, but none of them are the baseball team. The football team's okay. The basketball team's got nothing going for them. We're the stars around here. Well, you don't need to tell people what your major is. You just need to say, I'm a baseball player.
Scott Kucharabi says, I very much enjoyed this movie.
You know what, Scott? There's already two Scotts on this podcast. And we also enjoyed this movie. Yeah. and we also enjoyed this movie, so stop stealing our thunder.
And Tack commented, my first note is this movie isn't pandering to my tastes. What am I supposed to do? Get out of my comfort zone? Expand my horizons?
I see what you did there, Tack.
Frontiers are where you find them.
Nice.
We'll be back to reviewing Marvel movies soon enough.
Yeah, we'll do sci-fi stuff sooner than later. But this was a blast. It was a blast to talk about. Blast to connect with Scott Belford again.
Man, it was so great being on the show, guys. Honestly, I really, really enjoyed chatting this movie with you.
Yeah, we'll have to have you back to talk another sports movie sometime.
Yes, please. Love that idea.
And so you can again follow the Walk Off Podcast on YouTube. Just look up the Walk Off Podcast, at the Walk Off Podcast on Instagram, at Walk Off Podcast, on X, wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe. And of course, Scott's got a great stand-up comedy album as well called Staying Together for the Cat that you can find on your music streaming services of choice. So, yeah. And of course, you can follow us. Same deal. Facebook.com/I have some notes, at I have some notes on Twitter, at I have some notes pod on Instagram. But of course, we just want you to come join our Discord server. It's open to the public. We are having some great conversations in there, talking about trailers we saw, the last thing we watched, what's going wrong with the movie industry. Scott, like you were describing, the walk-off patrons really get deep and gritty into the weeds with the hobby. A lot of that over at the I Have Some Notes Discord as well. But for movie stuff. And if nothing else, please subscribe, rate, or review this podcast wherever it is you're listening to it.
Yeah, you can also head over to patreon.com/IHaveSomeNotes if you'd like to give us a little monetary support. It doesn't take a lot, but it helps us out quite a bit, and we do appreciate it. And we do throw some little extras to our patrons. So if you want to get in on that, do come on and check that out and help us out.
And in 2 weeks, we're going to have a special Side Notes edition where we're going to run ourselves an intellectual property lottery. So tune in 2 weeks for that. Interesting.
Yeah, to find out what it is.
Yeah. Mystery.
Keep your eye actually on our socials. We might be asking for some input on it. Some intellectual properties that you might work for the episode. But until then, I'm your host, Liam Creswick.
I'm Scott C. Bourgeois.
I'm Gregg Beaver. Keep watching the skies.
For pop flies.